the way an adversity challenges me today is not the same way that it used to challenge me. But the only way to prove that you've become better is how you deal with the next adversity. Welcome back to the Leaders Only podcast, where we talk about business, leadership mindset, and just pretty much anything revolved around building an incredible life. You know, one of the reasons that I started this podcast is because I felt like on the way to where we're at now, there wasn't really a place to go to learn tangible skills that are needed in order to succeed and further yourself and just get better overall in every area of your life. And so some background about me, I built a sales company that does over 8 figures a year. I own over $10 million worth of real estate, and I've built a multiple 7-figure income that's streamlined and in all honesty doesn't really need me. I plan on teaching you and documenting everything that I learned along the way. And if you get something out of today's message, if you can do me a favor, if you can like, share, and subscribe, it will give us the ability to further our message and help more people, which is what we're all about. Thank you guys so much. Let's dive in. Today, we got two of my brothers back on the show for the little Q&A, which I'm excited about. My brother Chris and my brother Irvin. And we're going to be diving into a whole bunch of good stuff today.
Let's do it.
Ready to rock.
All right.
Let's do it.
We never established who's asking the first question.
Well, I mean, we're going into the new year. So I know that everybody kind of gets to this point and they're like, hey, I'm ready to just become a whole new person. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that nothing's going to change if nothing changes. And, the new year is always kind of like the mental refocus for everybody. Yeah, and you'll see 30 days into January, everybody who planned on getting fit, now they're, not showing up to the gym anymore. So when it comes to going into the new year, what would you say is a good piece of advice for people who actually do want to change? How can they sustain that throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. The whole new year, new me, I've always hated that. That's my biggest pet peeve when it's new year, new me. But if you bring the same old habits and the same old you into the new year, you're just going to rinse and repeat the year that you just had. Right. And so even from a business perspective, one of the things that, everybody that I'm coaching right now, one of the things I've been telling them is if you're trying to scale your business, right, the best thing that you can possibly be doing is recruiting people into your business in the month of December and November. And the reason is typically the most serious people about changing their lives have already made the decision. So they're not waiting for the new year to make an adjustment. They already made the adjustment and they're looking to get in advance and or get ahead going into the new year, right? So from a business perspective, if you're in any type of recruiting business or if you're in a business where you're trying to bring on new talent going into the new year, December and November is the best time to bring on talent because it's only the people that are serious about changing their lives that are looking for opportunities in this moment because they've already pre-made the decision for the new year, right? But regarding staying active and staying consistent, when it comes to your goals and when it comes to the aspirations that you have for the new year, I think the biggest thing is just building a routine, right? You hear people talk about routine all the time, and we've even talked about routine before, so I'm not going to go crazy into it, but you need to have a non-negotiable schedule that you follow no matter what, that just leads to you putting in the work. All right. I think most people just show up into the day without having an intentional action plan on how they're going to dominate the day. And so my philosophy has always been, if I can control the morning and I control the night, the middle of the day will work itself out. Right. So I think that's a big deal. I think people need to have extreme clarity on what distracted them in 2023. Right. So one of the things that I always like to do is do start, stop, and continue, right? What do I need to start doing that I haven't been doing the last 12 months? What do I need to stop doing that didn't serve me? Maybe it was a distraction. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a habit. Maybe it was just something that I was doing that didn't help me become the best version of me, right? And then what do I need to continue doing? What worked? What was legit? What enhanced me? What made me better? Kept me focused? What kept me in the game? What kept me excited? What kept me going, right? And so I think every person should do a stop, start, and continue list, 5 to 10 things or whatever it is. And to be honest with you, the more successful you are, the list is smaller, right? What do you need to stop doing? If you're experiencing extreme levels of success, what you need to stop doing is probably condensed to maybe 1 to 2 things, right? If you are just not having any success at all, what you need to stop doing has probably a list of 5, 10, maybe even 15 because you have so many bad habits, hence why you're not getting the results that you want to get, right? So that's what I would say is what do I need to stop doing? Because, focus is not prioritizing one thing more than something else. Focus is the process of eliminating distractions. So if you want to hit a goal in 2024, it has nothing to do with prioritizing that goal over everything else, and has everything to do with eliminating anything that's distracting you from that goal. So if we can isolate the goal as the number one focus in our life, now all of a sudden we don't have all these things that's stealing our energy, stealing our time, stealing our excitement. And that's what's going to lead to people staying on track, right? Because that's what always happens. People have a goal, they're fired up, and then a distraction happens, and then they go on this tangent with that distraction, and they're like, oh yeah, I got a goal. And by the time they get back to the goal, they lost excitement on the goal.
Yeah, I think also everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And so, you know,
Punch
the
me.
year the year's not going to go smooth for everybody. Like that's just part of life, and I think that some people forget to factor in, hey, well, what do I do when I run into an adversity, or what do I do when not everything goes to plan? So, what would you say people need to do to stay on track when they do run into something that maybe kind of knocks them off course?
Yeah, I mean, adversities are going to happen no matter what, right? Like that's just part of it, you know? I've learned to love adversity. Like I've learned to love it, right? And I always challenge myself with every adversity. I challenge myself to show myself how far I've come. So let me give you an example, right? The way an adversity challenges me today is not the same way that it used to challenge me. But the only way to prove that you've become better is how you deal with the next adversity, right? So the only way for me to identify like, wow, I've become a better man, or I've become a better person, or I've become a better leader is how I deal with the adversity that is now in front of me compared to how I used to deal with it, right? So like I'll give you an example, like even this last week, right? I had an adversity that went on in my business, right? And today, as I was even driving here, I called the person that the adversity was with, and I just felt so good because of the way that I handled the situation, right? And it felt so good to know like, wow, I did good in this. Like I did really good in this. The year ago of me probably wouldn't have handled it this way. The 2 year ago of me. And so I go into the adversity with the intention to be better than I was when I faced the last adversity. And just that intention encountering the adversity allows me to operate with a different paradigm.
Yeah, that's huge. What about in the beginning when you maybe didn't love adversity? Because now you're at a different level. So from the ground floor, for new people that are trying to grow and develop, how did you keep yourself on track in that time frame, right? That season of your life, in business at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, don't go through things, grow through things. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's just the reality, right? Like my goal, like I don't want to go through anything because if you go through something, by default, you'll always come out on the other side, right? Like there is the fact that we're all breathing means that we've dealt with adversity and made it out on the other side. The difference between those who go on to become successful and those that don't is those that go on to become successful made it through the other side and then analyzed and grew because they grow through the adversity. They don't go through the adversity, right? So becoming better is like the first time you face adversity, right? Which everybody's faced adversity, so it wouldn't be the first time, right? But like let's just say from a business perspective or a life perspective or whatever it is, you face the adversity. If you don't intentionally get better after that adversity, then the adversity was a waste. Right? We wasted the entire adversity. The point of adversity is to help you become stronger. It's to help you become better, right? Like when you go to the gym, right? How do you make your muscle stronger? You put your muscle through adversity. You intentionally put your muscle through adversity in order to make it stronger. So it's the same thing when it comes to dealing with the problems that come up in your business. It's like, all right, I want to intentionally grow through this so I come out on the other side better, so I'm better for the next adversity because everyone's going to face things. They're all going to get punched in the face. And it's how fast can you get back on your feet, right? Like, from a boxing analogy, it's not about you will get knocked down. But being knocked down doesn't mean you lose the fight. As long as you get back up within 10 seconds. Everyone makes it through adversity. It's not about making it through adversity because the fact that you're alive means you've made it through all the adversity in your life. What determined whether or not you had success after the adversity was how fast you got back up. So my intention is every single time a problem comes up, my thought process is I have to get back up in 10 seconds off the floor or else I lost to the adversity. Yeah. That's it. Adversity pops up. I get knocked to the floor. All right, I have 10 seconds to get back up. And if I don't get back up in 10 seconds, I lost the fight. And so for me, it's almost like I'm in a boxing match with adversity where I'm not going to allow it to win. And the only way to allow it to win is if I don't get back up quickly. And that's what keeps me in the fight.
It's a huge nugget. It's the victim versus the victor mentality.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they're going to run through an adversity and then they're going to say, why is this happening to me? But then the victor, the person who wants to win and wants to grow, they're going to say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to grow. And I think people have to develop into that. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. It's a callus. The same way you build calluses on, if you ever worked in construction, like I grew up in construction, right? So working in construction, digging trenches or whatever it is, right? When you have a shovel in your hand, when you have a shovel in your hand, right? Like if I went and did it right now, to be honest with you, because I don't do that often, my hand's going to get blisters on it quickly. But if I did it for a month, by the end of the month, all of a sudden my hand has calluses over it, which makes it more difficult for the skin to be broken, right? So it's the same thing with our mind. We just got to build calluses on our mind.
Yeah. I think one thing you taught me was you always used to say through every adversity, there's a greater than or equal to blessing on the other side if you look for it. Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes we go through adversity, but we're not looking for the blessing and we're not planning and preparing to get out of the adversity. We're kind of just sitting in our own kind of funk a little bit. You know what I mean? So in the conversation of planning and preparation for the new year, is it like when it comes to planning your goals, is it a 12-month thing? Is it a 6-month goals, 3 month goals? Like how far out should someone plan to have a great 2024? And if they do plan a 12-month goal, not slowing down, knowing they have 12 months to accomplish the goal, if that makes sense, like should it be a quarterly thing? Like how does someone plan for the new year going forward? What would you say?
So I look at this a little bit different than most people, in my opinion, right? I feel like most people's like, all right, you got to start with the end in mind. So go to the month 12, reverse engineer exactly what needs to happen for you to hit it. I agree with it to an extent, right? The reason I disagree with it is because the fact is that people severely will either overestimate and or underestimate what they can do in the end of the 12 months, right? And they start comparing where they're at to that. And sometimes the goal looks so big that they don't even believe that they can have it. And so I think we need to have an idea of what it looks like, right? So let's say I want to, have this in my body, or I want to make X amount of income, or whatever it is. I think we need to have an idea of what it looks like. I think we need to have an idea of the foundation and what it looks like, right? But I think the real intention is the first quarter of the year, right? Let me aggressively go attack the first 90 days because I've always broken it down to 90-day sprints, right? 90-day sprints is basically 3 months, right? So 4 90-day sprints is a year. So I'm going to 90-day sprint after the first 3 months. And as we're coming up on the first 3 months, I'm going to start analyzing, okay, where are we at? Where do I want to be by the end of the second quarter? Okay, now I want to be here by the end of the second quarter and then sprint into that. And then, all right, now we're finishing, coming close to the second quarter end, right? Where do I want to be by the end of the third quarter? Where do I want to be by the end of the fourth quarter? So I think it's 90-day sprints because when you look at the end goal, right, it's like, all right, I want to hit this by December 31st. That's 12 months. So people pace themselves. Yep. People start going slower because they're like, I got a year to do it. I got a year to do it. I got a year to do it. And naturally you go into like a jogging mode versus a sprinting mode. And success is not a marathon, right? It's a whole bunch of short sprints. Like the whole success is marathon. I hate that analogy because all of a sudden people start walking, they start pacing themselves, they go slower, right? Like success, in order to achieve success in anything, it's like sprint like crazy. When you get to the point of exhaustion, take a weekend, take a day to yourself, breathe, and then go at it. Take a day, take a weekend, breathe, go on a sprint, and that's how you hit a goal. It's not, I'm going to pace myself one day. And no, I'm going to go sprint for 90 days. I'm going to lay it all on the line. I'm going to exhaust myself. And by the way, there might be exhausting days in that 90 days where you can't sprint for an entire 90 days. That's fine, right? Like this entire week, I've worked from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day. There hasn't been one day this week, 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. To be honest with you, I was exhausted. I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm going to move around the podcast. We have some stuff that we're doing after this. I'm going to move it around a little bit because I'm exhausted. I was like, no, just lay it all on the line because tonight I'm going to go get a massage, right? So tonight I'm going to go get a massage to help recover, right? A little me time to help myself recover from what I just did this week. So I sprinted like crazy this week. And so I'm taking a night to recover so that way I can go sprint again crazy next week. Does that make sense? So, I think in the early years of my career, I always was like 7 days a week. Yeah, right? Like 7 days a week, someone who's not giving it their all can sustain that. Somebody who's leaving it all on the playing field Monday through Saturday, which is what I do. Monday through Saturday, I leave it all on the playing field. And then Sunday is typically the day that I take to recover. I spend time with my family. And I realize on that day, it rejuvenates me to go back in the game. For the first couple of years, I just did 7 days a week, 365. That was just it. right? And I'm not saying I won't work a Sunday, because I will whenever we need to. Like, I'm all game for it, right? But the intentionality behind me just being aware of, all right, I've sprinted like crazy. I'm at a point of exhaustion. If I'm at a point of exhaustion, I'm getting irritated easier. I'm not making the best decisions. I need to regroup, get myself back together. It doesn't take me a week to do so. It's maybe an evening, maybe a day. I regroup, and then I'm back in the sprint the next day. And it's doing that for a quarter. And then as you get to the end of the quarter, reanalyze, get back in. And, as a cycle all the way until you hit your goal by the end of the year.
Yeah. I think there's a misconception about that, though. Like, people think it has to be 7 days a week, full force. And like you discussed, it's not necessarily the case. So they look at having a day off as a bad thing, as opposed to like, no, you need that evening or that day to kind of regroup and plan the week out. On the 90-day kind of...
Let me jump in on that, though.
Yeah.
There's a season to that.
Okay.
Right? Like, I'm just at I feel like there's seasons where that 7 days is... Right? Like, heck, this year I had a season where it was. I did for 90 days in a row, I was 7 days a week. Right? And I had like little afternoons and things like that, because then I always schedule time in, because my family's my number one priority over anything. Right? Like, so that was all there. I always made sure that was there. But there was a season of this year where it was 90 days where I was 7 days a week. You just can't sustain that forever. 100%. Right? So I think it's just kind of being aware of that.
Yeah, I like the 90-day sprint idea. I think it's super tangible. There's so much information out there these days. It's kind of crazy, and it's all conflicting too. Because everybody thinks that there's, just one path to success, and so they'll see somebody who's succeeding.
There is, Chris. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
They'll see some super successful entrepreneur saying, "Hey, you got to plan out 5 years in advance, right?" And then you'll see somebody, like you, and say, "Hey, 90-day sprints." That way, it's more tangible. And I think sometimes for people who are new to entrepreneurship, if they try to plan too far in advance, they don't even have a track record of being able to go and accomplish anything. Exactly. Yeah. And so they don't have that track record yet. And so they don't actually believe that they're going to. And so it's almost like they unconsciously self-sabotage their results. So I feel like that could be a lot more tangible for people. And it's more incremental steps, but do you think that there's also some upside in making the goals a little bit bigger than you think that you can actually accomplish?
Oh, for sure. And by the way, I have clarity on where I want to be by the end of the year, right? I have an idea of what the foundation needs to look like. So my 90-day sprints are to lay the foundation for that 12-month goal, right? And by the way, a second ago you said there's different ways to hit a goal. And I agree, right? Like, there's not one way to become successful.
Do you think it's knowing yourself?
I think knowing yourself is a big part of it, like what works for you. I think it's really important to know what works for you, right? Because, think about it. Like, what's 5 plus 5? 10. What's 5 times 2? 10. What's 8 plus 2? Gotcha. You with me on that? Gotcha. So there's so many different ways to get to 10. There's so many different ways to get to 1 million. You got to figure out what works best for you and your strategy and the way that you operate, right? Yeah. And then just stepping into that. Right. So I do think that's a big part. Remind me of the question, because I know we went a little bit off track just because we were.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, do you think that it's good to still have some goals that are bigger than what you think you can achieve? Yeah. Because, you always hear like, hey, if you want to go make $500,000 this year, well, then why don't you just shoot for $1 million? That way, in case you do fall on your face, maybe you land on $500,000 rather than shooting for the half and then falling on your face at 250.
Right. Yeah, I always have the big goal and then worst case scenario.
Right.
Yeah, big goal, worst case scenario. Big goal, I wanted to stretch me, challenge me, right? Just me throwing it out there makes me like, dang, like it almost makes you a little bit uncomfortable to throw it out there, right? And then there's the minimum, like no matter what, we're hitting this.
Yep.
Right? So I think that's a big part of it, right? Like, so for us, our goal is $12 million in net income in the year of 2024, right? From a financial standpoint, right? So $12 million, $12 million, $12 million, right? Worst case scenario, if everything goes wrong, we're making 8. Right. Like, so that's like from a financial perspective, that's kind of how we're operating it. So there's the big one and there's your worst case scenario. And I do that for every goal.
Yeah. How would you say, like, how does someone, as they step into the new year, how does someone not get comfortable? Let's say the first quarter of the year, they hit their goals, right? They're at a whole different spot, maybe financially or even within business. How does somebody not get comfortable and like have a good first quarter and then like maybe a bad second quarter or third quarter? I see it happen so many times in business, but like, how do you like just keep going and not get comfortable, even though the first 3 months of the year were like super, super good? How do you like get that level of like, you're still uncomfortable to go get that second quarter?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there's only 2 things that keep people uncomfortable. Right? Number 1 is competition. Number 2 is service. I think those are the only 2 things that keep you.
So talk about both. So
yeah. So like think about it, right? Like there's only so much money you can make, right? There's only so much fame you can get. There's only so much any of that
until it fulfills you.
Yeah,
because you can continuously make more money, but you've already reached the fulfillment level of the money, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Not necessarily the money, like the lifestyle, right? Like for instance, somebody asked me the other day, right? They're like, Matt, you guys are financially free. Like if you didn't show up the next 12 months, you make millions of dollars, right? Like that's it. If you didn't do anything, you make millions of dollars. Like what keeps you going? And I told him, I was like number 1 is competition, right? Like competition when like I want to be in the game. I want to be in the hunt. Like I want to go toe to toe with somebody else that's just as good, if not a little bit better than me. So it forces me to find out what I'm capable of, right? Like, so it's the
make a game out of it.
Exactly. It's all a game, right? Like like I said, there's only so much money that you can possibly have in your bank account until you're like, all right, well, who cares? Like it doesn't fire me up. Like when you have a nice house, when you have a nice car, when you are traveling the world, when you have awesome business, when you have money in the bank, like then what are you competing for from a business standpoint, right? Or then what are you striving for? Because you already have everything that the financial side of things can provide, which means that the financial side of things is not enough to keep you going, because it's not, going from does the person that, I'll give you an example, like Elon Musk, right? Let's just say it's 50 billion, which is way more than that, right? But I don't know what the number is. So let's just call it 50 billion. Do you think getting to 51 billion really is like everything like, no, like that's not the game. His is competition. He's like competing in the business place. He's competing with all these other companies. It's the challenge. It's the game. It's it's the game, right? It's the game of business. And so I was looking back at it the other day, and somebody asked me like, how have you always kept going? Like, and all these other people stopped. Is because all these other people stopped getting competitive, and I've never stopped being hungry, right? And the competition has changed, right? Like it used to be, I want to compete to be number 1. And then as the more success that we got from an individual level, I realized I only felt successful when my people won. So now the competition, the game that I'm in is not how much can I win? It's can I have the most people winning? So I'm competing in the game of, can I have the most people? Can I teach more people to win than everyone else? That's the game of competition I'm in, right? That also ties to service, which is like, how many people can I possibly help, right? So I think what gets people comfortable is the fact that they start making more money, they stop competing, and they stop serving, right? I look at it as there's so many people in this world that need me right now. There's kids in Africa that didn't get a meal this morning. So the fact that I can wake up this morning and not go strive for more means that I'm only thinking about me. And that's a selfish decision. I think comfortability is the most selfish act that you can have, because that means that you are only thinking about you and you being okay when there are people around this world that are suffering, that are struggling. And so if you want to stay uncomfortable, it's either you got to get competitive and you got to start trying to go after people and beat them, not in a combative way, right? But like in a, like, I'm going to go beat them. I'm going to catch them. I'm going to catch them. And you really compete like it's a championship. You really compete like it's a Super Bowl, right? Every day is a Super Bowl, and you're going to war to win that game, right? But then it's the service. People need us. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have not had the opportunity to subscribe just yet, if you can go ahead and do that, that would be incredible. We have about 10,000 plus active listeners, and not all of you have subscribed just yet. So if you guys can go ahead and do that, that would be incredible. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, there's an excitement to that momentum too.
Yeah.
I think like when you're like a striving entrepreneur who's reaching new levels, you have this momentum and you're like in this flow. And then when you get comfortable and complacent, you lose that flow, and it's like, dang, I'm not fulfilled. Even though I knocked this out, even though I proved to myself I could, if you lose your flow, like that's the exciting part about the game.
But then those people start justifying.
They'll justify
right?
why.
They start justifying, like, oh, I'm not competing, or like, I don't need to compete. I'm gonna run my own race, or like, this is why. It's because this, that, and the third, right? Like every single time somebody loses, they justify why they're lost. Yeah. Champions look at why they lost and say, it's my fault. I lost. I'm not losing tomorrow. Right. So I lost today. Hey, I lost today's fight. That's it. I lost the fight. Yeah. But tomorrow, I'm coming back better, hungrier. I'm coming back for the W. That's just the reality of it. So I think most people, their ego takes such a huge hit whenever they experience a loss that they start justifying it and they start blaming everything else, and they blame everyone. It's because of him, or it's because of her, or it's because of this, or it's because of that. And they blame everything rather than taking responsibility, because it's an easier hit on their ego to blame everyone else rather than be a man or woman and own it.
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes taking accountability when you're losing, but that's the only way you get better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. A lot of people aren't willing to accept that. And that's what keeps them in the same place and or makes them go backwards. I see a lot of people go backwards because they're not willing to take any accountability. So, yeah, that's huge. What would you say is a good skill set to develop, or maybe the number one? There's obviously a ton of good skill sets, but what would you say is the number one skill set that somebody should really intentionally work to develop if they want to go and get some new results, right? Like ones that they haven't seen before, that will actually help them level up and be able to sustain that level up in their life. Like for me, I'm thinking, is it consistency? Is it discipline?
Like,
Yeah,
what's
but
the
I don't
number
even-
one
I don't
skill
even
of an
know if
entrepreneur?
I don't even know if that's a skill set. I think those are more habits, right? So like,
Right.
you know,
but,
like-
but those habits could perish, right? You could lose those habits. So like, what do you think it is? Maybe it's not a skill set. Maybe it is a habit.
yeah, maybe it's more of a habit. I think it's the ability to just get yourself to show up every day.
So
right?
discipline.
Like, yeah. And here's the deal. It's not even that you have to show up at 100%. Like, just get yourself to show up, right? Regardless of how you feel, just get yourself to show up. I think it's like this, okay? If you don't feel like going to the gym today, okay, and let's just say you're exhausted, you just don't feel like going to the gym, but you get there. Are you going to have the greatest workout in the entire world? No. Probably not. But the fact that you showed up when nobody else was willing to wouldn't have showed up. Sorry, when everyone else wouldn't have showed up. The fact that you were willing to show up, that's such an identity building thing.
Yeah, you're
right?
stacking a win.
Yeah. So like for me, a lot of my identity stuff has not necessarily been from like, I gave my 100% every single day. My identity has been, I show up even when I don't feel like it, and I give my best even when I don't feel like it. And even though my best might be, second best compared to tomorrow, or fourth best compared to what I did this week, right? The fact is I gave my best for that day. I was intentional. I showed up. I did everything that my energy allowed me to do for that day, right? And that's really what it comes down to. Is like, I think that's the biggest thing, is if you just show up long enough, eventually you're going to learn the right things if you're intentional. Eventually you're going to figure out what does and doesn't work. Eventually you're going to develop the skill sets. Most people just stop showing up before they gather all the information and all the skills needed in order to succeed. Yeah. So if you just make the decision, I'm going to never stop showing up, then eventually you will get the skill set. Eventually you will learn what you need. Eventually you will develop everything, right? It's just inevitable that you'll win.
Why do you think people stop showing up?
Discouragement, right? I think that's a big part of it, is discouragement, right? Think about it like this, okay? When you get discouraged, you stop believing. You stop believing, you stop having faith. When you stop having faith, you lost the battle, right? And so the moment somebody gets discouraged, they stop believing that they can win. They stop believing that they can get a result. They stop believing that they can have more. And when you stop believing, that means you're lacking faith. That means you lack faith in yourself. That means you lack faith in your creator. And I feel like when you lack faith, your actions are no longer anointed. Your actions are no longer blessed. And I feel like there has to be some level of faith that I know that I have it within me, and I know that my creator has the capacity, unlimited capacity, but the capacity to help me get this done as well, right? So it's a discouragement, right? Think about what the word discourage means, right? Anything with the word dis in it means to take apart, right? Like dissemble, right? So when you discourage something or yourself, that means you've taken apart your courage. And people who lack courage don't take action, and people who don't take action don't get results. So that's always what it is. They've had too many disappointments and too many discouragements. They've been disappointed too many times, and that disappointment led to them getting discouraged too many times. And because they got so many disappointments and so many discouragements, they just stop believing that they can win.
It's the perspective thing, right? Like they could be looking at that and saying, hey, because it's an adversity, right? When something's not going your way to lead you to be discouraged, that's just adversity after adversity after adversity, which they're just looking at it wrong, right? Like the adversity is either here to shape me, or it's here to knock me down and rain on me, right? And so which way are you going to look at it? And I think that too many people get caught up, wanting to be rained on.
Well, think about like a relationship, right? Like think about that incredible woman that can't seem to find an awesome man, right? Well, she had a couple bad relationships. she got disappointed by those relationships. She stopped believing that a good man was out there. When you stop believing that there's a good man out there for you, or female, right? Whatever, man or woman here, right? You stop believing that there's a good person out there, right? Then you stop having faith that you're going to ever find someone that you can spend the rest of your life with, right? That's really what it comes down to. You have a couple bad relationships. That disappointment leads to discouragement. That discouragement leads to a lack of belief. That lack of belief leads to a lack of faith. And now all of a sudden you start walking around defeated, like it's never going to work out, or you're never going to find someone. And the moment you feel like you're never going to find someone, your RAS starts filtering out everyone that could be that person. And it's the same thing with your goals. It's the same thing with every area of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, like, this is maybe a personal question, but like with someone at your level, right? How do you continue to increase your belief? And is there levels to belief at your level? I mean, in the sense of 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, is there levels to that belief?
Yeah.
And what does it look like for you?
And by the way, when you say my level, right? Like, I think we all have the ability to accomplish any level, be at any level. So I do believe that there's levels of belief, right? Because you can believe that it's possible because you saw other people do it, but you'll never believe it's possible unless you know you can have it, right? So there's the belief because you saw someone else do it, which is level 1. There's the belief that you can do it just because you have a reputation with yourself. And then there's the belief because you already did it. That's an unwavering belief because like, I've already done this before. It's no big deal. So I feel like those are that ladder of belief, right? Like I saw someone else do it. Okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it, right? If you look at everything else I've done in my life, I've always come out on top. So I feel like I can figure that out. Okay, awesome. But you don't ever fully believe something until you've done it, right? Which is why, like, I remember coaching somebody and he was like, man, I'm just trying to change my life financially. I said, dude, just go make 10 grand once. Go make 10 grand in a month once, right? Just get over 10 grand. Put all of your energy and all of your effort into making 10 grand this month. And he goes, okay, right? And he worked his butt off and he made like 11 grand, okay? So now all of a sudden he makes 11 grand. And then what goes to his mind is, I've made 11 grand. So now I believe that I can make 11 grand. So he had a belief that he could because he saw other people make 11 grand. But until he did it, now his confidence was different. Like, I've done this before, right? And then I told him, I said, analyze how you made it. What are all the actions that didn't lead to the 11 grand? And what are the actions that generated the 11 grand? Let's remove all the actions that didn't generate the 11 grand. And let's only take the actions that led to the 11 grand. And now, what if you only take the actions that led to the 11 grand, but then you work just as hard on those actions as you did total? Now you make 22 grand.
There's so much validity to that. Yeah. I like just this last couple weeks in my business, I have a couple agents that have been with me for a little bit, coming up on a year, actually one of them over a year, and they just weren't getting the results that I knew that they're capable of, and that I believe that they knew they were capable of too. So they didn't have that internal confidence that they can go out there and get a result. And then they both around the same time, they started like working together and they started getting these results. And now their confidence is through the roof, and literally every single appointment,
you can tell,
right? Yeah. Every single appointment they sit on, they're getting a result now.
Yeah. Tasted it. Yeah.
It's crazy. And I even asked them, I said, what's the difference? Like, what happened? They said, I just believe I can now.
I mean, what are they, basketball analogy. What's the worst thing that you can do to a great shooter if they're having a bad game? Put them on the free throw line. Because all they have to do is see the ball going one time, right? The moment they see it going one time, they're like, all right, we're back, baby, right? That's really what it comes down to. Like whenever somebody's going through a dry spell in anything, it's like, go get a small result. It doesn't need to be anything. Like, it doesn't need to be this miraculous level of result. Like, just go get 1 ounce of something. Go collect one result, and then use it. Be like, all right, right? And then you go like, all right, let's go get 2. And then you start stacking the little results, and then little results lead to big results, right? And what it really comes down to is little results lead to a little belief. Little belief stacked up over time becomes big belief. Big belief leads to big results. Big results, generates even more belief, and then it becomes this compounding effect, like you just said.
Nice. Do you think that's why, like, I'm gonna go back to competition. Do you think that's how you catch like people within business who maybe seem like really, really far? Is that like you gain that small belief every single day, and that's how you catch them? Would you say that's how you do it?
So a couple things. Say number 1, beat them in the small stuff, right? So like when I came into business, I was like, all right, there's a lot of people that are doing better than me, and I respect these people. I'm going to learn from these people. I will always appreciate them, right? I was like, but I'm going to beat them in the small stuff. I'm going to show up earlier. I'm going to make more phone calls. I'm going to read more books. I'm gonna stay later. I'm gonna win in all the small stuff, and that built my belief. I'm like, I'm doing more than these people that are making more. And if I'm doing more than these people that are making more, I'm going to feel like I deserve to make more than them. Right? So that's really what it came down to. So my philosophy has always been like, I'm going to figure out who makes the most money, and then I'm going to outwork them. Not in a disrespectful way, but just in the fact that like, I'm just going to go outwork them. I'm going to do more of the stuff that nobody else is willing to do. I'm going to do more of the stuff that they are now big timing it and not doing anymore. And I'm going to go do those little things, and I'm going to stack. And all of a sudden I'm going to have this belief that I deserve to make more than them because I'm doing more than them. And that belief is what leads to me starting to attract the resources and the people into my life that are necessary to actually surpass them in a certain category. So yeah, definitely the competition helps in that. But then another thing is checking certain people off your list, right? Like, let's say there's 5 people ahead of you in a certain space, right? If you check off 1, now that gives you confidence to go after 2. Then you check off 2, and that gives you confidence
somewhere.
And then like 3, and then all of a sudden you find yourself on top. Now you get to the top. Let's say there's no more people to compete with. Now it comes down to how many other people can I get on top? Right? Like that's really what it comes down to. Because once you reach the top, fantastic. You know, like you ever heard the saying like it's lonely at the top? That's a quote that was not stated by a leader, because a leader would never show up to the top without their people. And that's just always been my motto. Like, I'm not going to show up to the top without my people. So people are like, Matt, how come you're still going? How come you're still doing what you're doing? How come? Because I might be experiencing levels of financial freedom that's awesome, right? But not all of our people are. And I'm not going to stop until we help them go achieve the same level of results in their life, right? Because there's just a different level of peace where you don't think about money. Like, there's just a different level of peace. It's not even the money. It's just, you just have this level of peace, like, you don't think about the things that stress you out. Like, that's what I want for everyone. Like, I want everyone that I ever work with, that I ever lead, that I ever coach, that I ever mentor. I just want them to experience the level of peace of having zero worry. Zero worry. Because there's nothing that a check can't solve, and there's not a single check that you can't make. All right? At least from obviously there's like health stuff, but you guys get my point.
100%. Let's talk about staying power. I feel like most people don't have it. We got social media in our face. Everybody's rich on social media, a bunch of BS. What would you say to the people that haven't got the results that they've expected themselves to get, and they've been putting in work for a little bit, and they just don't feel like they're on track, but it comes down to a decision-making moment where you either got to say, hey, I'm going to throw in the towel and give up and go restart and do something completely different, and then go through the process again of learning, right, or you stay and you figure it out.
Yeah.
Why do you think that people who do give up on stuff and then go start other stuff over and over and over, do you think they're ever going to catch a win?
No. Because most people, like, what if you quit today and your blessing was coming tomorrow?
Yeah,
like, just think about that.
Crazy.
Right? Like think about that. What if you quit today and everything that you wanted was coming tomorrow? Right? Like, I think about that all the time. It's one of the things that's always kept me in. I was like, what if my number one this, or my best this, or the person that was going to change my life, or like whatever? What if that was coming tomorrow and I gave up today? Like, goodness gracious, right? Like 3 feet from gold. You were so close. Yeah. But you're like, you know what? I'm going to go dig somewhere else. And the gold was literally 3 feet away. You've been digging for a year. You've been digging for a month. You've been digging for years. And you're 3 feet from the gold mine. You're like, you know what? I'm going to go dig somewhere else. Like, number one, I fear that. And I fear that for people, right? But then what I would say is the person that's had the staying power, but they're not experiencing the results yet, like, recognize the fact that you've stayed. I met with somebody yesterday, and she was so discouraged because she's been going at something for quite some time. I said, here's the deal. If you're really going at this thing and you're not getting results, there's definitely a strategy issue. There's a skill set issue. We can fix that, right? But what there's not an issue of is your willingness to show up. I said, do you know how many people would have quit already?
The majority.
Yeah. And I told her, I said, listen, look at how many people would have quit already. So the fact that you're still here, shows that you're not like everyone else. So no, you don't have the results you want. Maybe you're not making as much money as you want to have. Maybe your business isn't where you want it to be. But the fact that you're still here shows that you are one hell of a special human being. And you need to recognize that and use that as a confidence builder, because everyone else would have quit and you didn't, which means you have something in you that they don't have. And that needs to be recognized. Do we still need to go fix some skill set problems or whatever it is? Absolutely. But it's easier to fix those skill set problems if you're the type of person that just never gives up.
Yeah. I think success is inevitable for people like that. But it is demoralizing.
Oh, for sure.
So do you think that like those people that come to you, right? And they've been here for a
I
little
don't
bit.
think it's demoralizing.
You don't think
What
so?
do you
I
think
think
it is?
most people get demoralized, but it's not demoralizing. Because the reason it's demoralizing is because people attach success to the wrong things. They attach success to the result. They don't attach success to the progress. Right?
Elaborate on that.
Like I don't attach success to the result that I got. I attach success to who I became in the process of attaining the result. So you might not have the result just yet, but just think about how far you've come. Think about the person you've become in the process. Think about your abilities, your skill sets, right? Somebody called me the other day. He's like, hey, I may not have gotten the numbers that I wanted last month, but straight up, I'm so much better. He's like, I was just thinking about like how I did something last month compared to how I did it the month before versus how I did last month. And dude, like I can tell I'm better. And even though the numbers aren't showing up just yet, I know they're going to be because I can feel myself getting better. Two different confidence levels. He had so much confidence, and his confidence was not tied to any success that he's had. His confidence was tied to the fact that I'm better. Like, whoa, I just did that. I just made a call like that. I just got a result like that. I just prospected like it's just every area. There was a different level of confidence because his confidence was not tied to the result. It was tied to how skillful he became in the process.
Yeah. The question I always ask is what matters more, what you acquire, who you become. Right. And I got that from Inky Johnson. And I think we get so caught up in what we acquire, we forget who we become in the process. And you talked about it before, progress equals happiness, right? What makes people fulfilled and happy? They feel they're progressing and getting better. I think that was a huge point that is powerful. Going back to like the new year, like what advice would you give somebody who had like two-part question, had like the not so good year and somebody who came off like record-breaking year, like they killed it in their industry? What advice would you give to both who had a not so good year but a great year going into a new year? What would you say?
Yeah, great question. It's the same answer to both of them. Who cares? Who cares? Doesn't matter, right? Yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. Used to be's don't make no more honey. You know what I'm saying? So used to be's don't make no more honey. So who cares what you used to do, right? Like if I could have had the best year of my entire life. Doesn't matter if I don't go make this year the next best year of my entire life, right? Like, and then if you had the worst year of your entire life, well, thinking back about how bad it was isn't going to make the future better.
Yeah.
So I just think it's like, so what? Is the success of your life determined by what you did or what you're going to do? So I just think it's your ability to say like, all right, I had a bad year. Who cares? All right, I had a great year. Who cares? None of it matters because people are not going to remember me from that year. What they're going to remember me for is what I do this year. What they remember me for is what I'm going to do the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What they remember me for is what I'm going to do with the rest of my entire life. So even if I had the greatest year, like how many players have scored a touchdown, but they didn't make it to the Hall of Fame?
That's a good point.
They had a great play. They had a great year. Doesn't mean that they're going to the Hall of Fame, right? How many quarterbacks have thrown a pick that still made it to the Hall of Fame? Every one of them. There's not a single quarterback that hasn't thrown a pick that's in the Hall of Fame. So if you think about it, you're going to have bad plays. It's your ability not to take the last play into the next play. You're going to have good plays, right? It's your ability to use the momentum from it, but not get comfortable. Because if all of a sudden you make a pass and it's an incredible pass and you just feel like every pass moving forward is going to be that easy, well, then all of a sudden you just lost. That's when you get sacked. That's when you get taken out, right? So my advice would just be, who cares? Forget it. Doesn't matter. Best year of your life? Fantastic. Nobody cares. Worst year of your life? Fantastic. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the next 12 months?
Also compared to what, right?
Yeah,
it's progress
exactly.
equals happiness anyways. So if you get to this point where you're like, oh my God, I just had the best year financially. Well, number one, compared to what?
Yeah.
Right. And then if you don't go and have a better year, you're not going to be happy.
Right.
So you almost have to stay out. It's kind of like this, it's a game. And people just think that once they reach this certain financial goal or get this new vehicle or get the new house, that they're going to be all all fulfilled and whatnot, but their fulfillment does not come from material items. And I don't think they realize that until they get them.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of people who are making a lot of money depressed because, number one, they don't have anything aside from the financial goals or the material that's driving them to where they feel fulfilled. And then number two, I feel like they get to that part and they're like, hey, this is where I thought was going to lead me to happiness. And it doesn't.
It's also why people can't build a big team if they're in a leadership business, right? Because when you're chasing money, you can't build a big team chasing money.
Yeah, people will sniff it out.
Yeah. And it's not even that people sniff it out. I don't believe God anoints selfish decisions.
I don't know.
Right? Or he doesn't, right? Yeah. And so I came to this realization the other day and I was trying to think back. I was like, why did God bless me with everything that we have? I said, through thick and thin, he's always known where my intentions were. Wow. You know? Even in the moments, right? Like, because I've been through some shit, just to be honest with you, you know? I've had my name dragged through dirt. I've had and no matter what, the blessings always still kept coming, regardless of what happened to me. And I started realizing is in everything, in every moment, in every adversity that we face, and every negative thing that is ever said about me, and everything that, you know, no matter what, God was always there with my intentions, and my intentions were always pure, and they always have been pure, because I don't operate based off what I can do for myself. I operate based off what I can do for other people. And even though I'm an intense guy, and even though it doesn't always come across that way, just because I'm so action oriented, and because the way I show people I love and care about them is not through me giving you a hug and asking you how the last 18 years of your life is. The way I show people I love them is by me going and working 16 hours a day the last 5 days to lay a foundation for them to have a better life. And they may not see those things, but that's how I show people I love them. That's how I show people I care about them, right? And so I just realized that the reason that we've been able to be blessed with the level of success financially and you know, the size of a business or whatever it might be that we have is because through everything, I think that my intentions are pure, and I think God blesses pure intentions. I really do. I think he blesses pure intentions, and that's why we're at where we're at, is because I've really truly taken action, not with selfish gain in mind. I've truly taken action with the intentions to better the lives of other people. In fact, I don't think about myself at all, which is why I don't get good. This is why like having self-care is so hard for me, because I'm like, how can I have self-care when other people need me? Wow. You know, like that's why I've always never took a day off. That's why because like, how can I even think about taking care of me when there are so many people who still need me? What type of human being am I to even take care of myself if other people need me? And then I just realized that I can't fill other people's cup if mine's empty.
Yep. I think the devil stops trying to attack you too when he realizes that you keep showing up.
He'll just attack the people around you.
Goes back to, that's a good one. It's true.
Wow. Yeah. But I think one thing you've taught us is that your skill sets will determine how much money you make. But like you talk about, your character, your integrity determines how much money you keep. Is that kind of in correlation?
Because you can, like I said, you can have all the wealth in the world, but it'll be taken away from you if your heart's not in a good spot. You know, like I just really believe, like, I know I'm going to become a billionaire because I know God knows what I'm going to do with it. You know, and I'm not going after becoming a billionaire. So, you know, part of it is like, I want to find out what I'm capable of. And I want to know that I became skillful enough in business that I was capable of making it. But I don't care about the $1 billion. I can give two craps about $1 billion.
Yeah, it's not going to do much difference.
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to know that I'm capable of crossing that threshold. And then once I cross that threshold, like, all right, let's go do some crazy stuff with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many people can we go help? How many people can we go bless? How many, you know, like, what can we do with this? And, you know, like, the person that wrote Harry Potter, I forgot her name, but she fell off.
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling, yeah.
She fell off the Forbes list. Right? She went from billionaire to non-billionaire through charitable donations. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I just think that's so sick. Yeah. Like, what's the point of having it? Like, heck, if your family had 100 million, they're going to be set, and you can take that 100 million. Like, so what if we just took the other 900 million and just went and friggin' did crazy things with it and just changed the world, right? Yeah. Like, I really believe that you can change the world, but it's the people that are crazy enough to think that they can change the world that normally do. And so for me, it's always like, how many crazy people can I surround myself with? Can I surround myself with a whole bunch of crazy people that believe that they can change the world? Because if I'm surrounded with a whole bunch of crazy people that believe they can change the world, then collectively we can. Because one person collectively with a team can change the world. So imagine what a whole bunch of crazy people that believe they can change the world can do together.
It's gonna happen
You know what I'm saying?
a lot faster.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, loco.
I think the two even just biggest takeaways from this was be competitive and serve heading into the new year. I'm like, because the competitiveness, if you increase the belief, right, you tack on the small little wins and you start to believe more, that'll help you compete more, which is how you win. But then also continuing to work on yourself and have the mindset and the selfishness of like selflessness of serving other people. I think those are the two keys for me. That like that's how you have a big year is compete, which comes from more belief, and then also just serve other people and don't make it about you. Don't make it maybe about an income. Make it about whatever business that you're in.
Make it about
serving other
winning
people.
and serving.
Winning and serving, exactly.
Yeah, like
That's
I
huge.
said, how do you scale your income from 100 grand to 200, 200 to 300, 300 to 400? It's not you chasing more money. It's you getting more competitive and you serving more people. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Today's been a great day.
Heck yeah.
Any final questions or thoughts as we wrap
Those
it up?
are my thoughts. I mean, compete and serve and just continue to work on yourself and plan the new year.
Yeah, I think I got out of today that that discipline is pretty big too, right? Getting yourselves to continue to show up even on the days that you don't feel like it, which is probably going to be most days for most people. I think that could, really allow you to continue to serve, because if you don't have the discipline to show up, how are you going to serve?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? With the intention of serving on your mind, it's probably going to make it a little bit easier to get yourself to show up, but there's also a level of discipline required to do that. So
Absolutely.
I think today was awesome.
Yeah, super good. I think 2024 is going to be an incredible year. If you had a great 2023, who cares?
That's
If
the
you had
takeaway. That's my
if you
third
had-
takeaway.
If you had a bad 2023, who cares, right? It's about what you're going to do in 2024. And so if you guys got something out of today's podcast, if you guys can do me a favor, if you can like, share, and subscribe, I mean the world to us. Then obviously, as you guys know, if you guys have questions that you want us to answer on this show, you guys can send it through Instagram in the comments, through the DMs. You can go on the Q&A podcast on YouTube or whatever it might be, and you can drop the questions in there. But our goal is to serve as much as we possibly can. So thank you guys. See you guys next week on the Leaders Only podcast.